My world collapsed in that moment. Those letters, they were from her. The woman I loved, the woman I lost. And now, she was gone. It all started with a pen pal club, a place where strangers could connect through letters, hiding behind nicknames. I called myself Neo. She was Nikki. We didn't know each other's real names, but through those letters, we connected in ways I never imagined. We shared everything, our dreams, fears, loves, and regrets. We became best friends. Our bond began when we were 15 and continued for 6 years. We promised each other that until we met face to face, we wouldn't reveal our true identities. Every week, I eagerly awaited her letters, each one a lifeline that bridged the gap between us. Then, everything changed. One moment, I was driving home, thinking about her, and the next, I was gone. The accident was bad. I was in a coma for weeks, and when I finally woke up, I wasn't even in my hometown anymore. My parents moved me to the city for treatment, leaving everything behind, including our old house. So much time had passed, so many moments were lost. Months later, when we returned to my hometown to sell the house, I found them. The mailbox was stuffed with letters. Most of them bills or junk, but hidden underneath there they were, letters from my Nikki. I tore them open with trembling hands, desperate to know what she had written. For all this time, she had written me so many times, her words overflowing with love, hope, and later, confusion. In one of the letters, she had written the words I had longed to hear. I love you, Neo. She had confessed her love, hoping I would feel the same, but I never wrote back. I never even saw those letters. With every word, I felt her slipping away, her hope turning into doubt, her love into uncertainty. She wrote a few more times after that, each letter more heartbreaking than the last. In her final letter, she wrote, I'm sorry for loving you. I'm sorry for ruining our friendship. I've waited long enough. I will not write to you again. My chest tightened as I realized the depth of her pain. She had been waiting, day after day, for a response that would never come. I wanted to tell her everything, to explain why I hadn't replied. But it was too late. She had moved on. There, inside the last letter, was a short note, barely more than a few lines. My parents separated. I've moved to another place with my dad. I agreed to marry a man he found for me. Your friend, Nikki. And that was it. The end of our love story. The love I never had the chance to say out loud. I spent years thinking of Nikki, imagining the life we could have had if I had just seen her letters in time. But life moved on, and so did everyone around me. My parents started urging me to settle down, so I married the girl they chose for me. She was everything a man could ask for. Pretty, kind, patient, but she wasn't Nikki. No matter how hard she tried, I couldn't love her the way she deserved. Instead, I blamed her for everything. My failures, my misery. I acted like she was the reason for my pain, when all she ever did was try to love me. Her kindness became a burden, constant reminder of what I had lost. Every day, I grew colder, more distant, trapped in my regret. And in the end, I punished my wife for the emptiness I carried inside. One night, after a long day, I came home drunk, angry, and tired. She was in the kitchen, still cooking, trying to make everything perfect. But all I could think about was how hungry and frustrated I was. So I yelled at her, louder and harsher than I ever had before. She cried, but I didn't stop. I told her to leave. I wanted to be alone in my misery. She didn't fight back. She just packed her things and walked out. But I didn't care. After she left, I couldn't control my anger. I tore through our room, throwing away her remaining belongings. As I did, a small box fell, scattering papers across the floor. I bent down to pick them up and froze. They were my letters to Nikki. It hit me all at once. The woman I married was Nikki. My Nikki. I couldn't believe it. The woman I had loved all along was right in front of me, and now she was gone. Will she come back to me? After everything I've done, can I hope for a second chance, or is it too late?
I thought marrying the man my father chose would make me forget the boy who wrote me letters. Yet even now, years later, I can't escape the memories of Neo, the boy who disappeared when I needed him most. I was an only child, living in a house full of chaos. My parents fought constantly about money, family, things that didn't even matter. It became a routine. Everyone knew. Friends would ask, "Are you okay? Why are your parents always yelling?" And every time I had no answer. It was embarrassing. So I withdrew from everyone. Slowly I stopped talking, stopped going out. It was easier to be alone than to face the whispers. Then one day, I heard about the Pen Pal Club. It promised a break from the modern world. No screens, no texting, just letters. Something about it seemed perfect. It felt like a way to escape my reality, a place where no one knew about my broken home. That's where I found Neo. He was my age, and from our very first letter, it felt like we had known each other forever. We made one promise. Until we met in person, we wouldn't reveal our real names or faces. Through our letters, I wasn't the girl from the troubled home. I was just me, Nikki. Neo's letters were my refuge. When the shouting at home got too loud, his words brought me peace. I was falling for him. With each letter, my feelings for him grew deeper, even though I had never seen his face. It was a connection that went beyond friendship. I was in love. After years of exchanging letters, I finally asked him if we could meet. He agreed. We set a date, a time, and a place. The day of our meeting came. I waited for hours, but he never came. My heart broke. I wrote to him, pouring out my feelings. I told him I loved him and that I wanted to see him, but no reply came. Days turned into weeks. I wrote again, apologizing. Maybe I had crossed a line, ruined what we had by confessing my love. Meanwhile, my parents got divorced. My mom quickly remarried, and with that, everything changed. I had to move with my father to a faraway village, leaving behind the life I knew and the only connection I had to Neo. Finally, I wrote him one last letter. In it, I told him I was done waiting. I was going to marry the man my father chose for me, and I told him not to write back anymore. I thought it would help me move on, to make it final. Years passed, and eventually my father did choose a man for me to marry. At first, he wasn't bad to me, but we lived in two different worlds. He never talked openly with me. I spent my days thinking about Neo, wondering what had gone wrong, and blaming myself for loving him. Months passed, and the silence between my husband and me grew colder. My husband was distant, angry all the time. We lived in two separate worlds, and no matter how hard I tried, he always found fault with me, even over the smallest things. One night, everything exploded. I had made dinner, and as soon as he tasted it, he lashed out. "This is too salty. You can't even cook a simple meal right." His voice was so harsh, his anger sharper than I had ever seen before. I couldn't stop crying. And then, in a voice colder than ever, he told me, "You should leave. We can't be together anymore." I left. I went to the train station, tears streaming down my face, wondering how my life had come to this. Just as the train was about to arrive, I heard someone running toward me. A hand grabbed mine. I looked up, startled, and there he was, my husband standing in front of me. Without a word, he handed me a piece of paper. My heart stopped when I saw it. It was the last letter I had sent to Neo, the one where I told him not to write back. But how could he have this? I looked at him, confused, my hands trembling. "Nikki," he whispered, his voice breaking, "I love you." In that moment, everything fell into place. I stared into his eyes and I knew. My husband was Neo, and in that moment, everything changed. We hugged, not as a distant husband and wife, but as lovers finally reunited after years of longing.